All right, everyone, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So once again, good afternoon and welcome to today's presentation. Today, we will be talking about achieving work-life harmony. Next slide, please. My name is Anna Tan, and I am the Be Well Program Coordinator at WorkWell NYC. And today I will be moderating the conversation. I am joined by our guest speakers. We have Kamika Randall, the Communications Coordinator for WorkWell NYC. And we are also joined by Sergeant Aaron Lohman. He is a certified personal trainer and life coach at NYPD. We have Sonia Denise, founder and creative strategist at Dream Development. And last but not least, Leon Majimoto, Human Resources Director at the New York City Department for the Aging. Today's presentation is brought to you by WorkWell NYC. WorkWell NYC is the City of New York's Worksite Wellness Program, and our mission is to create workplaces that engage and empower city employees to live healthy, active lifestyles and to provide health and well-being services, programs, and resources. We do this through 5 key program areas. We have Move More, which focuses on physical activity, Eat Well, which focuses on nutrition. We have Take Action, which focuses on primary care and prevention. We have Be Well, which focuses on mental health. And lastly, we have our Project Build initiative, which stands for Building Understanding, Inclusion, Learning, and Diversity, which focuses on health equity. And today's agenda is as follows. We will be introducing work-life harmony. We will discuss the 8 dimensions of wellness. We will complete a short self-assessment, talk through some case studies, complete a visualization activity, discuss a time management action plan, and of course, there will be time for questions and answers at the end. And again, as a friendly reminder, this presentation is being recorded, and the slides and recording and resources will be sent to you all afterwards. And you will not be able to turn on your cameras and mics, but we do encourage you to use the Q&A button to ask any questions. And now I will turn it over to Sonia to take us through what is work-life harmony.
Thank you, Anna. And it's wonderful to be here today. I like to say that today is the first day of the rest of our lives. So this is a beautiful moment to be together. I think the beginning of the year is a really perfect time to consider the subject. I'm really glad that we also decided to use the term harmony because it invites us to consider life in musical terms. Most of us are familiar with work-life balance, but that implies like a 50-50 split, which is actually, it's just not true. Whereas harmony is more about energy management, and work-life balance feels like this elusive task that we can never quite reach. And so today I'm excited that we're going to explore this a bit more, but just as a reference, if anybody wants to dive into this beyond the time we have today, I'd like to recommend a book called Life in 4-Part Harmony by Sandra Lewis. But let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this definition is really, really helpful as we think about this, right? When we think about work-life balance, it's stability produced with even distribution of weight on each side of the vertical axis. Again, suggests a 50-50 split in distribution of time, effort, resources between work life, and life outside of work. It also implies a static one-size-fits-all structure. And again, I just see this and I think pressure and I fail. I look at work-life harmony and I'm like, ooh, the definition of harmony, pleasing arrangement of parts. It implies that work life and non-work life are different components that together create a whole. It implies a flexible arrangement, and what is most harmonious or what works best is different according to each person's given situation at a given time. And again, I want to dive back into the metaphor around music, because we know there's all different types of music. There's jazz, there's classical, there's opera. And really, I think this is an invitation when we think about harmony to find the rhythm that suits your life. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So, you think about the importance of work-life harmony, and you have to ask yourself, why is it important? It's because we are important. You are important. I think that you are the single most important contribution to your life, to your work, to your family. And when we don't have a handle on that, we have some of the results that we see listed here, right? The stressors that happen, the headaches, instability, the changes in our eating habits. There can be drug, alcohol, and tobacco abuse. There may be even other kinds of abuses that aren't listed here. So it really encourages us to think of ourselves from a self-care perspective as we, again, continue to think about what harmony looks like. Can we go to the next slide? Awesome. So when you take a look at some of the stressors here, I actually would like to open it up to the chat and ask you to consider some additional stressors that you might add to the list. And I'll see if I see any, but I can read them out while we're waiting. So increased work demands, working with people who are at risk or in crisis, conflict with coworkers, the limited resources to do job duties, exposure to COVID-19, commuting, or working from home and those distractions. I think, for some folks, it's also hard to manage if you are supervising someone. Sometimes it may be difficult to get a sense of what they're doing. But we have some ideas in the chat, so let's take a look. Oh, working closely with leadership. That's a good one. Yeah, and then also sometimes those leadership demands may have changed because our jobs have changed, right? And so looking at stressors outside of work, there's caregiving for others, household chores, a lack of time for self-care and personal hobbies, parenting, also elder care, and again, if you're managing someone's health in addition to your other responsibilities, you may be setting up doctor's appointments, and that's another level. Managing the finances and planning for the future. And we've got some more ideas in the chat. Okay. Work from home distractions with family, children, and family members, having to manage deadlines, okay? And new duties to take on at work. Again, all completely very 2020 and leading into 2021. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. So this is a really great slide to focus on. And I'm actually going to share another resource with you as you think about the three kind of circles that are listed here. There's an awesome article by someone by the name of Tony Schwartz called Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. And basically Tony posits that time is the one thing we don't get back, so it's limited, but energy is renewable. And when I said earlier that harmony, work-life harmony is really about energy. And so he has these 4 categories of emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual renewal, and where we have here the body, the mind, and the social. And those are kind of very similar, like they're all very, they work together. But I think the thing that's important is thinking, what are the things that I need to do to refresh myself? When we think about those stressors, are there times that we can step away and just, hey, maybe I'll take a quick walk, or maybe I'll read a book or read a poem, or, finding ways to manage your energy so you can be refreshed and go back into whatever it is that you need to balance or find harmony with. We'll say harmony instead. The next slide.
All right, thank you, Sonia, for that wonderful introduction to work-life harmony. And just a quick note, due to some technical issues, we do not have the chat button. So if you have any comments to share, please use the Q&A button. I see that many of you have done so already. So thank you for your patience as we work through this together. But now I will talk a little bit about the 8 dimensions of wellness. So as Sonia mentioned, work-life harmony is something that's really unique and specific to each individual. So as you reflect on what work-life harmony means for yourself, we have all these different dimensions of our life to consider. So let's think about which areas, if any, that might need more attention or focus right now for you to feel as fulfilled as possible. So we have the intellectual dimension, which focuses on expanding knowledge and skills and valuing lifelong learning. And in the physical dimension, that's caring for your body to stay healthy now and in the future. And in the social dimension, that's maintaining healthy and meaningful relationships with others. And the spiritual dimension is finding purpose, value, and meaning in your life and participating in activities that are consistent with your beliefs and values. The environmental dimension is understanding how your social, natural, and built environments may affect your health and well-being. The financial dimension is making informed financial decisions and preparing for short and long-term financial needs or emergencies that may arise. And in the occupational dimension, it's preparing for and participating in work that provides personal satisfaction and life enrichment. And lastly, in the emotional dimension, it's understanding and respecting your feelings, values, and attitudes, and appreciating the feelings of others. So let's keep these dimensions in mind when we move on to the next section. So now we will complete a work-life harmony self-assessment. So for this portion, I encourage you to grab a piece of paper and something to write with. And let's think about, how do you spend your time? So let's take a moment to draw a pie chart showing the percentage of time that you spend on yourself, your job, your responsibilities at home, and your relationships during each day. And so what we see here are some examples of different types of activities that you may spend your time on, but there may be something else that is very important to you that you don't see listed here. So let's take a look at some examples. So here we have some charts from Leon and Kamika. Would any of you, Leon or Kamika, like to jump in and talk a little bit about the thought process on how you created these charts?
Yes, good morning, Anna, and thank you for this opportunity to be part of the panelists here for introducing work-life harmony. Working from home, for me specifically, can be challenging, and there's, having kids can be, it's a new challenge every day. And when I think about harmony and how it's introduced today, it brings, for me personally, it brings consistency, peace, unity, tranquility, and nature. And that, I think that's very important, especially when you want to balance your work life and your family life. For me personally, I have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and most recently a newborn. So my work life has been changed immensely, trying to balance work life and family life. As you see in the pie chart, 55% of my work life is dedicated, getting my tasks done, trying to meet the deliverables. I serve in a manager role at the Department for the Aging. So it can be challenging. And, looking at harmony, it's important to balance that, but it's also important to communicate. And as Sonia mentioned, we are important, because if you don't address these issues and balance work and family life and everything else that happens in the world around us, it could put a toll on our health. So, here is my pie chart, and hopefully I can improve it. I'm working on it, but I'm getting there. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you, Anna. And here's my pie chart. And it's based upon a 24-hour day. And when I used to think of balance, it meant that work and life were separate. However, over time, I got to realize that it's nearly impossible and quite challenging splitting time between the two. However, with a work-life harmony, you can actually integrate work into your personal life. And I'm now disinvested from this idea of balance and more so invested in this idea of integration of the both areas to improve how I spend my time and make sure that they're harmonious. And going back to what Leon said, working from home has changed, the era so immensely of how I manage my time. And it's just important that that integration takes place. And one of the things here, I'd like to spend time with my provide me with the support that I need, and they kind of refresh my energy so that I can, maximize the time in other areas. I'd like to decrease the time that I actually do work, because one of the things that's not listed here is how distracted I can become and the times that is being taken away because of those distractions. So those are the things that I'm trying to decrease so that I can maximize my productivity in all of the other areas. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanne and Kamika. And we're ready to move on to the next slide, please. And so now we have some examples from Sonia and Sergeant Lohman. Sonia, would you like to jump in and give a little background here?
Sure. I'm pretty sure that this doesn't add up to 100 because that idea of energy management, that idea of being refreshed, while it's, you know, not finite and fixed to this pie, we all have 168 hours in a week, 720 hours in a 30-day month. So when I think about this, I really do think about where I can maximize things. It says dualpreneur because I have, you know, wear 2 hats in terms of the things that I do. Single life is, again, me redefining some of the other categories to say, what does this mean to me? So as you're working on your pie chart, it might mean that you have to give yourself some other categories. Empathy is huge in my life, and that could be, you know, in community service and the time I spend giving to family, friends, and also clients who can't afford services or things like that. So that's kind of what that looks like. It's kind of like my tithe. And then professional development for me is really, what am I investing in myself? And honestly, professional development and self-care feel like they could go together, but self-care is really distinctive around health and things like that, and sleep, that thing, yeah. That's it.
How you doing? I'm Sergeant Lohman. Mine was broken down into a 24-hour day. This is what my 24-hour day typically looks like. It used to be very bad. My work, you know, my time at work was spent way more than the pie you see now. I was spending at least 70% of my time at work, and I had to readjust my priorities to make sure that I was taking care of the other aspects of my life, which I was neglecting. And because I was doing that, it was affecting my health. It affected my weight. I weighed 425 pounds at one point, and I was stressed out. I had heart problems. I had all sorts of health issues. So I had to scale it back to what it looks like now. Obviously, it's not perfect, but you know, I don't think there is a such thing as a perfect work-life harmony. Only as perfect as we can make it possible. Things are always going to come up, and these categories that I broke it down into obviously aren't all-encompassing categories of things that I do in my daily life. Like, I just saw professional development here on Sonia's, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do that too, but I didn't put that in my work, you know, in my pie chart. They all kind of have to run into each other at one point, like Kamika was saying, and you really have to like learn to do things. Like, even when you're at work, like I personally, I'm not working from home. I've been in the field the entire time. I'm in the field right now. You can see I'm in a van. You have to make them work together. Like, when you're at work, you know, you got to make sure you take some type of time for self-care, whether that be a cup of coffee, whether that be, you know, just stepping away from your computer and having some kind of balance. That's, you know, you have to find time for everything, you know, or maybe you even go to the gym. Your gym time can be during your workday if you're able to do that. You know, you just have to find harmony in all those things.
Awesome. Thank you, Sonia and Sergeant Lohman. So let's go on to the next slide. So now we're going to take a moment to talk through some case studies. So let's look at this first case study. Here we have Marisol. She is a Hispanic 39-year-old female employee who works in a managerial role at a large city agency. Due to COVID, she is working from home, but also must take care of her young children. Between work and family obligations, she hasn't gotten a full night of sleep in months. Because she is a manager, she feels obligated to be on call and quickly return calls and emails. She feels that she doesn't have enough time to take care of her family and wishes she had time to meditate and develop her mindfulness and mental wellness practice. So what are some things that Marisol can do to adjust her time and set boundaries to create work-life harmony? So I will throw it over to our panel. Perhaps Leon, would you like to take a stab at some suggestions for this case?
Sure, Anna. So, you know, working in a managerial role, you know, managers have flexible work schedules, and you know, we're not perfect humans, and sometimes it's okay to communicate when it's challenging, when you can't meet the deliverables, or when you have tight deliverables. Communicate, and I think that's the most important part of, try to leverage the work-life balance. But also, one thing I would like to mention as well is look at the resources. There's so much WorkWell NYC resources that's available. For example, there's leaves. When you work with children, for me, for example, paid parental leave was an excellent option because it really helped me with balancing and focusing family life and work life. So there are a lot of resources that you could look into with human resources, look at your agency and what WorkWell offers. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Leon. Did anyone else from our panel want to respond to this one? And of course, for those of you who are watching, since our chat button is not working right now, if you have any other ideas, you can use the Q&A button to share those thoughts as well.
There's something in one of the Q&A that talks about some of the psychological impact. And this is interesting because the last line talks about, the lack of being able to stay mindful and having a mental wellness practice. And so, there has been a lot of challenge, like life is very different and people have been traumatized. And I think that, not being a mental health professional myself, I defer to you all, but, if whatever is necessary in terms of getting that type of support, I know there's a lot of virtual therapists available and things like that, but it could be prayer, it could be meditation, it could be speaking to a therapist. Those psychological options are available. But I think it's just really important that people, especially during this time, acknowledge where they are, because you can't solve a problem that you don't admit.
Awesome, thank you for that, Sonia. I think we're ready to move to the next case study. All right, so now let's look at another example. So in this case, we have Kevin, who is a 27-year-old Asian male employee at a mid-sized city agency. Due to COVID, he is working from home, and he is also very passionate about music. He has a part-time job teaching virtual piano lessons, which he hopes will help him pay off his student loans. Outside of work, he regularly schedules video calls with his family and hosts weekly virtual hangouts with his friends from college. However, he's starting to feel drained from the virtual activity with Zoom fatigue setting in. So what are some ideas for Kevin to adjust his schedule and create work-life harmony? So now I will throw it over to our panel.
I think one of the things that he can do, instead of scheduling weekly calls, maybe it can be bi-weekly. And in thinking about, his Zoom fatigue, what can he do to refresh his energy now that, if he's scheduling it bi-weekly, what else can he do to help him feel refreshed?
I think that, when it comes to anything like this, you really have to really decide what is your priority, and you have to focus on that, especially if it comes to your mental health and you're burning out and you have Zoom fatigue. You have to determine whether, he hopes these piano lessons will help pay his student loans, but at the same time, your mental health and your mental wellness, to me anyway, is a higher priority than paying that off. I could defer that. I could pay the minimum payment, but my mental health is just, if you don't take care of it, if you don't start focusing on that, it's just going to get worse. So, I mean, to me, I would cut back on the piano lessons and just focus on myself, maybe do some, get outside. They host, I don't know where his family lives or whatever, or his friends, have a socially distanced outdoor event, something safe, where you could actually be near each other, but still far away. At the height of COVID, having that and actually having like contact with people and seeing smiling faces is a much different experience than seeing it through a computer. And it definitely helps with your mental health for sure.
Yeah, I think that there's a wonderful comment also in the Q&A that communicating with others that you'll do your best, but may not be able to respond right away to certain things is important. There's something about setting the boundaries in saying yes, but no, or saying no in a way that works for you. I think also the idea of having to be on screen all the time can be exhausting. So if it's possible to say, hey, can I be off camera? And you can also have a Zoom on your phone. I think what's difficult too is the privacy that's necessary because we're still working. So, you know, making sure that people still feel like you're engaged, but not having a meeting in the park, right? So, you know, but I think it's really about finding ways to ask where you can and say no where you can.
Awesome, thank you for that. And we have some great suggestions in the chat, such as making some time to go out in nature or going for walks with family members or scheduling some breaks from technology. I think these are all really great suggestions, and hopefully these are things that we can all incorporate into our daily lives. So now let's take a look at our last case study. So here we have Gerald, a 56-year-old African-American male employee who is in a managerial role at a large city agency. His role is considered essential, so he has to report to work on site in person. He also volunteers with his partner at a local nonprofit, but due to COVID, he has to stay at work for longer hours and sometimes goes in on weekends. His partner works night shifts at a hospital, and his partner has expressed frustration that they rarely get to spend quality time with each other anymore, let alone spend time volunteering a cause that they are both passionate about. So what are some steps that Gerald can take to improve his work-life harmony?
You know, I think about it, again, the transitions that we've had. And one of the things I like to do is I create like an inspiration list and a fascination list, because having that list available to me helps me think about, okay, what could be, you know, what could be something that could be inspiring? And so with your partner, it's like, what are things that we love to do? And even though we have these constraints, we still may be able to get some of these things done and make it an exhaustive list, so you can kind of even surprise each other with picking something off the list and using that to have that time together, if that's possible, and make it fun and, like, you know, an adventure.
My only advice is the time you do spend together, because this has been me. My wife's a nurse. I'm a cop. Make that time count. Make it special. Make it memorable. That's it. That's what you have to do.
I also feel like since he's in a managerial role, he can prioritize his work and see where he can delegate some of his tasks. That way he can have more time to maybe go home and, you know, have that time with his partner.
Awesome, thank you everyone. So we still have a lot of content to cover, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. And now we will work on a visualization activity. So let's think back to the pie charts that we drew from the earlier session. So dream big. Think about what you would change about how you spend your time. Think about how you would ideally like to have your schedule laid out. And what are some steps you can take to work towards this ideal? So I invite you all to draw a second pie chart reflecting on your ideal. And here we have some examples from Leon and Kamika. Leon, would you like to take a moment to discuss some things that you would change to work towards your ideal time?
Yes, Anna, thank you. So for me personally, dream big is to get more sleep, of course, in the current moment I'm in. But, you know, as you see the pie chart, I did a self-assessment for myself, and I had to look at what my priorities are for work, family life, and how I could balance that. And look at what resources I have. One of the big resources that we have to our disposal is the EAP programs. A lot of the EAP programs provide resources and coping strategies on how to manage work life. And I think that helped me more than anything else, because it prepared me for my mental well-being, but it also helped me with how to work more effectively. And also the WorkWell resources. The WorkWell New York City resources are immensely beneficial. And I took advantage of that. I'm able to prioritize my work schedule and still balance and have enough time for family and get as much sleep as I need to function. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. I think for me, I need to cut down on the amount of distractions that I have during the day when I am at work. And being that we've transitioned to remote, you know, you have to now set boundaries with, when you're doing your work, and then family time kind of intervenes into that. And I think setting those type of boundaries so that you have less distraction, that way that you are, I am more productive at work, and I can be a lot more accomplishing in the tasks that I have to get done. And what it will do is give me more time for some of the things that, like I said, refinement, my energy, which is spending time with my social circle that support to get to my ideal time management.
Awesome. Thank you, Leon and Kamika. So now I'll hand it over to Sonia. Sonia, would you like to share a little bit about your ideal?
Yeah. I have these distracting thoughts about like Mega Millions and things like that. But, other than that, I'm thinking really like, I would like to spend more time in my Sonia Care area and merging my empathy and family activities to have a greater impact in those areas. I love what I do, so I don't think I really reduced work that much. But dreaming big, for me includes, again, in those professional development areas, I feel like a mad scientist with like 6,000 ideas. And so it's really being able to see one of those come to life, like developing my own dream in that sense. That would be super fun in this next season. But yeah, I think it's really stretching myself to continually master harmony in my life and then show up in ways for my family and friends that would be more impactful.
For me, what I would change is I would definitely spend more family time. Family time is something that should be valued, and also try to get more sleep. But sleep is a luxury these days. And work, I enjoy what I do currently. And like I said in the previous slide, I had to work really hard at balancing it to where I got it now. So it is pretty much, not ideal, but more ideal than it was before. But I've really worked at doing that. So you're going to have to work at doing it too.
Awesome. Thank you, Sonia and Sergeant Lohman. So as we continue to work on these pie charts, because we recognize that what is your ideal now might look different from your ideal later, let's go over some tips to keep in mind for achieving work-life harmony. So remember to schedule time for both work and fun, set realistic expectations, accept that perfection is impossible, look at challenges and reframe them as opportunities, make time for creativity, and express your feelings instead of bottling them up. Next slide, please. And so now we will talk a little bit about time management and some other tools that you can use as you work towards achieving work-life harmony. And so for this section, I will hand it off to Kamika.
Thank you, Anna. So when you think of striking a balance between work and life, usually we think of how much time we spend in those areas and also our energy that is being spent in those areas. However, with a work-life harmony mindset, we learn to rethink time and energy management. And by reassessing how you're managing your time and your energy investments, you'll tend to end up having time and energy. And a great tool we can use to achieve a work-life harmony goal is a logic. We use this in program management, and what it really is just a table that gives you a roadmap to achieve a goal. And in the work-life harmony context, we're trying to achieve work-life harmony. You first begin to think about the things that you need to achieve that goal, which are your input and your resources. And those could be work, time, money, family, your colleagues, things of that nature. Then you start to think about, well, what do I do with those things? What actions do I take to achieve my goal? And I think in the context of work-life harmony, one of the things, or a great place you can start, is actually creating a current schedule of how you're prioritizing your task and the things that you do in your work and your personal life. And then you create ideal schedule that shows how you like. as for your input, you begin to think about, once I've implemented those things, has there been a change? Is there anything that was established? How do you feel on the inside? You think about what things that did take place after you've done all the things in your ideal schedule. And one of the long-term outcomes, or rather impact, of these types of things, once you've implemented a change, is the fact that you get an improved feeling, an improved skill, a behavior, now increase your wellness and energy management to ensure that you apply discipline. And without that, you can't get to your ideal schedule. You have to be disciplined about these things, and just to ensure that the things that you're doing from your ideal schedule, it's actually being implemented, so that you can have the harmony between work and life. And now that we've transitioned to remote work, it's just very important that those things are actually implemented, so that you can refresh your energy and you feel a lot more productive, and you're maximizing in each of those areas. And I encourage you to think well, that was discussed earlier, because all of those things
All right, thank you, Kamika. I think the audio was cutting out, in and out a little bit there, but just to sort of summarize and recap what Kamika, what you were saying, is this logic model is another tool that we can incorporate into our planning for achieving work-life harmony. And taking our pie charts, reflecting on your current schedule and your ideal schedule, you can use that to assess what is something that you would like to change, and change the amount of time that you spend on it. And you can use that to make adjustments to see what changes in the outcomes occur. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So let's think about, how can we put our dream action plan forward? So identify what you'd like to change in order to move towards your ideal distribution of time, and think about the specific actions that you can take. When, where, and with whom will you take action? So for some examples that we have, you could delegate some tasks or some chores to a family member, or at work, see if you can reach out to your colleagues for help, or even talking with your supervisor to make some adjustments to your workload. Other suggestions could be automating your monthly bill payments, or planning out your meals in advance to plan out your schedule. And if anyone has any other ideas, please feel free to share that in the Q&A as well. Oh, and I see we have a question about the pie chart. Is a reflection of 24 hours or just the daytime? So the thing with the pie charts is those are really personal to yourself. And if you choose to set it for 24 hours, you can do that. Or if you just want to have it as an 8-hour workday, that's fine too. It's totally up to your preference.
Yeah, I did mine from a week perspective.
Yes, that's true. You can also look at it from a week or a month. You can be as creative and as flexible as you like with it. So lastly, something else that is helpful is to stay accountable. Identify a family member, friend, or coworker that you can share your action plan with. And perhaps they might have an action plan of their own. So make a commitment to checking in with each other regularly to see how the action plan is going. Encourage and support one another, and do your best to not be discouraged if setbacks occur. And in summary, stress from different dimensions of life can lead to negative physical and mental health outcomes. Work-life harmony is a successful integration of work and leisure time in the way that works best for you. The ideal balance of work-life harmony looks different for each person's individual needs and circumstances. Review what's happening in your work and home life, and visualize how you'd ideally like to balance your time. Evaluate what is doable and create an action plan to make it happen. And lastly, be kind to yourself along the way. And finally, I'd like to share some words of wisdom from Michelle Obama. We need to do better at putting ourselves higher on our own to-do list. So we will close the presentation with that thought, and we will now open it up to Q&A. So again, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And we do have a handout about the pie charts that will be sent along with the slides and the webinar recording afterwards. So please feel free to share your questions now. And we have a question about communicating with your supervisors or your team when you feel like unrealistic expectations are being placed on your work from home time. So perhaps Leon, would you like to take a stab at this question?
Thanks, Anna. Yes, you know, communication is so important, and you know, you have to be able to communicate with your supervisors or your leadership. It's so important. You know, you are important. Your health is important. I can't amplify it more than enough. Sonia mentioned it earlier. We are important because if you don't take care of yourself, your supervisor or anyone else would not know what's happening in your life unless you communicate and speak about it and really request or seek guidance from someone or your supervisor. So it's important to reach out for assistance.
Anna, there was a question earlier where someone said, what are some of the things that you would suggest for people who prioritize work over self-care? And it's interesting because that would be me. And so they say that people sometimes don't change until their pain exceeds their fear. And so what's difficult about that is that you don't want to have to change because it's painful. But, you know, some of my health challenges caused me to say, wait a minute, you know what, it made me change my priorities. And so, you know, if there's a way to, again, get accountability, I feel like we've talked about a lot of it, but having accountability, creating a plan, going back to what Kamika shared. But I also heard this really great statement that said, someone said, we only live once. And the response was actually, no, you live life every day. And so there's a grace that we need to have with ourselves when we don't make it the day before to go, you know what, this one goal, I'm going to work on this one goal until I can achieve this. If it's getting up and taking a walk in the morning, then you work on that till you get there, and then you have the next goal and the next goal. So I think it's really about being graceful with yourself. And I hope that helps in terms of just some ideas for that question.
It is for sure. I mean, and a lot of it is about behavior modification, which is like one of the hardest things to do is to change your behavior and start daily habits. There's a book that I'm going to recommend. It's called Atomic Habits. I suggest anybody who wants to start something or wants to change something about themselves, whether it be big or small, read this book, Atomic Habits. It gives you a step-by-step run through on how to create new habits in your life. And it is a very, 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 very good book.
Awesome, thank you. So we have another question. What is a good way to speak with your family about your needs? What is a good way to communicate without sounding like you don't want to take care of others?
That's sticky. Because sometimes people have to, unfortunately, their offense is theirs. But if it's necessary for you to take that space, take space and then make space. But you've got to take space for yourself. I have this other thing, I'm full of quotes, but I say, I'm not in control of the lessons that other people are here to learn. And it's just released me to be able to say to folks, this is what I need. It's not that I don't care, but I have to ask you to respect this is what I need.
No, that's so true. It goes back to that old thing. Like, if you didn't call somebody, are they going to call you to check on you? You know what I mean? Like, it's a reciprocal relationship, your self-care. So if you are worried that they're going to get mad at you, why aren't they mad, you know, the opposite way, that you're not taking care of yourself? They should care enough about you that you were open and honest with them to take care, that you want to take care of yourself. It should be a mutual relationship. It shouldn't just be all give and then some take. It should be back and forth. And they should understand that your care is priority. And you got to remember, you can't pour from an empty pitcher. You know, you got to take care of yourself, or you can't take care of anybody else around you. And it's super important.
I think also we reward people for behavior that doesn't serve us. And I think there's something to be said about retraining people. And I have opportunities to do that with people that I work with where they were expecting something. And I'm like, you know, I don't have enough information to actually respond to that. So what I'm actually going to do is take you through a list of questions, which is not really, you know, what they want, but it's necessary so I can actually be helpful.
Oh, thank you for that, Sergeant Leon. Excuse me, Sergeant Lohman and Sonia, for those very insightful responses. And we have another question. I would like to set clear boundaries at work, and I even set reminders for myself to get away from the computer, but how can I stay committed to that? I think that's definitely a challenge that we're all experiencing.
It's gonna sound so corny, all right? But make a vision board. Like, seriously, like, put something that you can see. I don't care if it's a screensaver on your phone or if it's something in your cubicle at work or something at home that you can look at that shows you what your life wants to look like. And it will be a constant reminder of why you need to take a break, why you need to step away, and why you need to value the most important things in your life and make those a priority.
I also have a Fitbit that reminds me to move. And I put reminders on my phone to like drink water. So I've been drinking water throughout this time. So it's like every 30 minutes, water.
Awesome, thank you for that. So we'll take 2 more questions. We have a question on what are some pointers or suggestions for limiting distractions at home?
I would say set up an area wherein not many people would come by, not many of your family members. And if they do, sort of communicate with them to let them know within this time frame, you know, I'm at work, you know, anything that needs to be, you need to say or, you know, do. You tell me, I think setting up those types of boundaries can help with the distractions. Like right now, I have a toddler and he's with me 24/7 and he's actually walking up the stairs right now, but I've closed my door and I've communicated with my family that, you know, this is what it is right now. And, you know, when I'm finished, then I can take over that, you know, that part of parenting.
All right, and we have one more question. How do I express to supervisors the need to approve requests for time off? And this person is saying that they feel that sometimes there is resistance for their request and they may be negotiating against it. So maybe Leon, would you like to take a stab at this question?
Yes. No, our agency, thankfully, we have a leave coordinator. And there's specific leaves for every situation. For example, there's childcare leave, there's family medical leave. Those are leaves that's, you know, every employee is eligible to receive family medical leave if you fall within the criteria. So I strongly recommend, you know, read through the guidelines. It's available through CityShare. Look at the leaves that's available. You know, you should not be afraid to request a leave, because if you need a leave and you need to take it because of your personal health or to take care of a family member, it is there available.
All right, thank you, Leon. So unfortunately, we do not have time to get to all of the questions that were asked today, but we do have a lot of really great resources that I will talk through now that can be really helpful for these different situations. So first we have Be Well. Be Well is the mental health portion of WorkWell NYC, and it provides educational resources and wellness programming to city employees to help employees manage stress and develop resilience. And you can learn more about Be Well at the website nyc.gov/bewell. We also have the Let's Talk campaign. Let's Talk is WorkWell NYC's campaign to eliminate mental health stigma in the City of New York workforce by building supportive workplaces and building resilient employees. We also have a pledge that we invite you to sign, which by signing the pledge indicates that you recognize that mental health is an important component of our overall health and well-being, and that you are prioritizing mental health in the workplace. Next slide, please. And we also have the Employee Assistance Program. EAP provides education, information, counseling, and individualized referrals to assist with a wide range of personal and social difficulties. And you can contact them by phone, by email, or at their website, which is nyc.gov/EAP. Next slide, please. There's also NYC Well. NYC Well can connect you to free confidential mental health support. You can speak to a counselor via phone, text, or chat, and you can access mental health and substance use services in over 200 languages 24/7. And then lastly, we have a few upcoming events. We have the Artist Life virtual gala and award ceremony. The Artist Life inaugural virtual exhibit showcases art from City of New York employees that invites them to reflect on the events of 2020 and tell stories of resilience through art of all mediums. So you're all invited to join us for a celebration, an evening of celebration, for a talk back with the artists and for the culminating award ceremony. And you can RSVP at the link that's shown here on.nyc.gov/buildgala. And we have 2 more webinars. We have Nourishing a Healthy Heart, webinar and cooking demonstration. So this event is to celebrate Heart Health Month, which is in February, and there will be a healthy takeout meal makeover. There will be a cooking demo on pineapple fried rice, and you will learn about other foods that are good for your heart and how to prepare a delicious heart-healthy meal for the whole family. And lastly, on February 10th, there will be a webinar, A Year of COVID, Working Through Collective Trauma. So pandemic living has affected everyone in some shape or form, and we invite you to join us as we look back on the past year and review some lessons learned, strengths we have gained, and strategies for moving forward to grow and rebuild. And you can register for that at on.nyc.gov/collective trauma. And lastly, we do have a quick poll question for you all to answer. If we can launch the poll. So here at WorkWell, we are always doing our best to help increase everyone's knowledge and make our programs and resources as accessible as possible. And we're always trying to improve. So this question is, this webinar increased my knowledge on the topic presented? Yes or no? And we invite you to take a moment to respond to that. And this poll is anonymous, so please feel free to be honest with your response. All right, so I think that covers it. We got pretty much all the responses. Thank you very much for taking that time to share your thoughts about today's webinar. And that concludes today's presentation. So thank you so much to everyone for attending. Thank you to our wonderful speakers, Leon, Kamika, Sonia, and Sergeant Lohman. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights. And of course, thank you to the WorkWell team behind the scenes, Ayana, Joanna, Ellen, and the rest of the WorkWell squad. So hope you all have a great afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you at our next WorkWell event.